Okay, let's get started. Okay, I can now tell you a little bit about the further developments within Checkmk. So our roadmap, what's going to happen over the course of the next year. So over the past 2 days, we've given you a lot of details, and we also gave you some impressions of what's going to happen in the different areas and so on. So I think a couple of these things I'm going to summarize and just give you an overview. So let's get started with Checkmk 1.6. I think we've seen this slide 2 to 3 times already, so this is just a little reminder. We have all the important topics on here. On our way to version 1.6, we've done something very special, 1.5 plus, which is an interim feature. And in 1.6, we are going to actually take it a step further. We're going to implement more services for Azure monitoring, for example. Also, further notification plugins are going to be added. We already have some. We already heard some in the first presentation, Kubernetes and also Docker monitoring, things are happening. So we're definitely making progress. Then we also have dynamic configuration. That is something that's going to be added in 1.6. That's a completely new feature. Then we also have the Grafana integration, which we saw earlier. That is also something that we're going to have. That's going to be definitely be changing for 1.6. So I've already gotten a lot of positive feedback, some more ideas and things like that. So I'm very, very positive, and I'm very much looking forward to all of that. It's going to be great. Good. Then we have the BI visualization. Matthias already showed us that yesterday. We're going to take that one step further as well. There's going to be some more fine-tuning, and of course we're going to also implement all your feedback, and that's going to be part of 1.6. We're also going to have the new Windows agent, the Windows agent that we just started the beta version on, and we're going to get started with that soon, and want to just see if there are any problems and things like that, things that we have to solve, and also if there are any problems that we had with the old agent, if we're going to have them with the new agent as well, or if it's going to be solved, or if we're going to have to work on it, and so on. And then also capacity management as well. You've already seen that in Oscar's presentation as well. So it really doesn't have a lot to do with Checkmk yet, and that is something that we're doing as a proof of concept right now. It's just created autonomously, just so that we really don't have to pay attention to all the uniquenesses that Checkmk has. So all of that is what we're working on right now, and over the course of the next 1 to 2 months, we can sort of just create one solution within Checkmk using all of that knowledge gained. Of course, we're going to do many more things as well, not just the things that you see on the slide right here. Another thing that was asked for a lot, so how do we get the stable 1.6 version? When is that going to happen? The beta testing phase is supposed to be started in May, so very, very soon. Some of you who know the recycle, you might be surprised because you're just thinking about the innovation release. In this cycle, we don't have the innovation release. First of all, because we have a lot of features that we just launched very late, and also because we just thought that over the next over the past few years, we've made the experience that only with the beta phase, we really reached a lot of users. So we then have the raw edition, and that's really when it really gets started with all the feedback that we need and so on. And that's why we decided to just go with the beta version right away. Like I said, over the next 2 weeks or so, we're going to get started. We're going to do the same thing we did last year. So we're going to have a separate mailing address that's then going to be used for debugging and things like that. So it's definitely going to be our priority. So then we're going to have definitely taken big steps towards the release of 1.6. Okay, so this was just an overview about 1.6. Now let's have a look at the roadmap for the next year. Just a rough roadmap at this point in time. So everything that we're doing right here is based on our thoughts that Jan explained to you all the way in the beginning. So we see ourselves as a solution, just as a refresh general monitoring tool, and it actually actually definitely is supposed to sort of meet your expectation, your need, and so on. It's going to be a tool that can actually cover lots of functionality of specialized tools. Of course, not every single one of them, but most of them. And we really want it to be a multi-tool for somebody who really uses hybrids and is supposed to monitor heterogeneous networks. And that's why we're going to take it a step further. We're going to implement your feedback, and I'm sure we're going to get a great impression of what makes sense, what you need, and so on. And yeah. The roadmap presentation now is really not geared towards all specific details or anything like that, little feature requests and improvements and so on, user interface, Watto, and so on. But instead, it's really mainly about all the big things, the topics that are also going to be on our agenda. And based on that, we can really see what you need and what Checkmk needs to offer you. And again, all of this is our current point of view, okay? So we want to keep adapting that in the future, and we want to make sure that the input that we've gotten today and also yesterday from the pin boards, conversations, and so on, all of that is going to be part of our thoughts. And of course, not everything that we've learned is going to be visible in these slides right here, but we're definitely going to be implementing all of that, and then we're going to get started with all these development cycles. And I am very, very positive that we are going to take big leaps. Okay, so if we now look at the second level, so what you see here, we have individual areas of expertise, if you want to call it that. And one point being, or the most important point being, is what can you monitor, right? So the monitoring areas, what kind of systems can you connect, what's going to be in Checkmk. Then we have user experience, so it's actually easy to use the tool and so on. All of that is going to be important as well. Then we have new features as well, and then also integrations with other tools. That's also another point that's very important, and that is definitely important in a world where there's more automation all the time. Then we obviously also have points that you don't expect to be there right from scratch, but of course they are very important. So that would be security and of course quality as well. You have to make sure that while you are working on it, you definitely have to keep your quality up to par. And then also performance. Performance is also a very important point. We want to be able to scale and keep scaling Checkmk, and that's why that's also a topic that's very important in everything we do. So we're going to look at even more details. Let's start from the bottom left. So this is really just sort of our core. That's where we started with monitoring service networks, storage systems, and so on. So this is where Checkmk sort of started out. That's still one of our most important areas of expertise. We also have a little check right here because we can really tell you that we're very good at doing that, right? So that doesn't mean we're finished yet. We're never going to be finished. And even in the areas that you see here, Windows servers, Linux servers, and so on, we're definitely going to be working on that as well. We have to sort of keep updated because we do know that that's one of the most important points for us. We also learned that networks are very important. We see that on the pin boards as well. We heard it last year as well. And we actually included network monitoring because of you, and we really have a great addition to Checkmk because of that. So we know that in addition to that, we just currently have a very simple version. So you see a network interface and you monitor how many bytes are going through there, how many packages, and so on. So there's lots more possible, specifically, for example, NetFlow connections and things like that. And you would have definitely more details in order to get in information like partners and so on. All of that could be found out, and using the Checkmk, it could sort of be married to all the remaining data that's already available as well. And that way you would have a very good overall picture. And what we're going to do specifically is something that we don't know just yet. And we also saw on the walls that some of the customers who got in touch with us, some of the users said, okay, I know something, I know how to do it, I can give you something in terms of information and so on, and that is something that's definitely going to pick up within the next month or two. So we can let you know at that point in time what we're going to do. If we talk about storage, storage is also very important because we're also very knowledgeable when it comes to that. The VW presentation gave you some details, so there's some expansions, extensions, and so on. If you think about it, and if you use some programming power, there's definitely a lot that you can do already. And that is definitely creating added value for those people who need it. So that is also something we're very happy to see, and I'm sure we're going to have some conversations about that to see if this could be part of our standard product, just to make sure that we can have a bigger user base that can see the added benefit. Okay, that's just an example, so of course it could also be a lot more in that area. I mean, there are so many different things that can happen. There are so many providers for different solutions, so I mean, we're doing pretty good as well, but there's always room for improvement. If we talk about cloud, at the end of the day, this whole cloud business is a business that only very few can offer. You know, it's a few big players that we've already shown, AWS, Azure. They're the big players that we can see right now. We see that they're being used quite often, and then we also have the Google platform, and we also heard a couple questions earlier about that. And we also saw that some of you are interested that on the pin boards, but there's definitely a big gap here, and also other big players have some difficulties catching up or keeping up, and that's where we're definitely gonna just see what the need is, you know. So we know that the services that we have, we're going to expand those if it makes sense and if it's helpful to you. And at the same time, services that we don't have yet, Google Platform, for example, and we're just going to build in some checks in order to make sure that we have our foot in the door and we sort of have the base in order for us to be able to continue, and if we wanted to. We also have OpenStack, private clouds. That's also a big topic in big enterprises specifically, and I do think that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And because of that, I would say that's also another point that's going to be on our agenda. And I am sure that's also very interesting to discuss it with people who are already using it. If you have an unmet need, please let us know what a feature set that you might need could look like. Then the next new big topic is containers. The Docker, we have the little check right here because we do feel like we can definitely compete with others, especially with our version that's included in 1.6. So we can say, okay, this makes sense for those of you who are using Docker Node. If you do something on a Docker platform, so you have a good basis, and starting from there, you can use Kubernetes or OpenShift, Docker Swarm, and so on. So you can just take it a step further if you wanted to, and you might just end up on applications where you can be even more detail-oriented. And this is a world, for example, Kubernetes to us is something that we think is most likely to actually put work in. Specifically, meaning that within Kubernetes, you really can do more applications. Tom already introduced quite a lot what we're currently doing and so on, and there's more to come as well. Specifically, I feel that if you look at Kubernetes and you look at diagrams about Kubernetes, it looks very, very complicated. And I think at this point in time, we can also say if you can offer good monitoring, then it would definitely also have to have the same structure, good visualization, dashboards, maps, and so on. So different things. And I would definitely say that's very, very helpful in comparison to just a list of hundreds of services that are somehow connected. So I would say all of that would make sense, and we can imagine imagine using that. OpenShift, same situation. So I would say it's just very close to the whole Kubernetes topic, and there are some specialties, obviously, and we also have to learn more about it, and we would like to know how you're using it specifically, especially those of you who've worked with it, and what we have to do to help you, to support you. So we definitely have to depend on your input, but at the end of the day, we're not the ones who are using systems like that to that degree. Docker Swarm is maybe not as important. We do hear it once in a while. However, it didn't pick up the same speed as the other ones in real life, at least from our point of view. And we would say that Kubernetes is just way, way, way bigger, and it's probably going to remain way bigger. That's why we're prioritizing Kubernetes over Docker Swarm. So we do want some input, and if you're telling us that we're wrong, then we can definitely keep talking about it, no problem. So that's our point of view when it comes to containers. Then we also have applications. Applications, I would say, is just a little bit more of a general term. So at the end of the day, it's really just based on all these other platforms. There's going to be some other services, for example, databases or message queue systems and things that are commonly used, and also they're definitely also part of this new world, this modern application development world, and they're being used quite often. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we sort of develop our product in a direction where we have just a solid situation. If it comes to database systems, we're very, very strong, and I feel like you're in a similar situation. We're very strong when it comes to SQL databases, because in the enterprise environment, they're still sort of ruling, but for quite some time there's been a range of databases. They're called NoSQL databases, and they're also very popular. They also want to be monitored, and because of that, it's also a point for us where it does make sense to work on that. We also have MongoDB, and that's also used for other databases like Couchbase and things like that. So it's not available yet. And that is something that we want to take a step further in order to have access to more modern applications. Then there's also a couple big data tools, if you want to call them that. For example, Elastic, Spark, Splunk, things like that. And they're systems that I'm not sure how many of you actually use systems like that. Let me ask you, is anybody using tools like that? Wow, okay. I didn't expect that. That's a lot of you. Elastic, probably most of you, right? And yeah, it's probably that. But I also yesterday introduced Elastic. We've done a lot with that. That's really the starting point for that category. And we definitely want to work on that and really do some basic work here in order to just see what else is possible, what's relevant, and so on. And we're definitely going to have a closer look. And hopefully we can just work together and find great solutions. And then we have this whole area of automation tools, DevOps. All of that is sort of playing together, right? On the one hand, we have development tools, continuous integration pipelines, and things like that. Jenkins, for example, that's automatically supposed to build things and so on. If that works, then there's also going to be tests that are running automatically. Also systems that really, after there was a successful test, they're going to deploy something and so on. So at the end of the day, it's your whole chain if you want to take it that far. And from our point of view, it would make sense to have a tool like Checkmk to sort of access all of that and to just say, okay, you have this Jenkins server, you have your jobs, and they all sort of have something that we can get for Checkmk, and we can then also just see the DevOps workflow. And for us, that definitely makes sense, and we do like to use development tools like Jiva in order to tell developers what they need to do, and we do use them ourselves as well for sort of working on the development, and Jira, for example, is not trivial. When it comes to performance questions, for example, we actually had some problems with that. At the end of the day, it was a simple solution, but you just have to come up with it. You have to think of it. And you could have used some metrics from Checkmk. If you had done it properly, you could have just seen that this is the problem. There's a garbage collect, for example, whatever the problem is. So theoretically, the path from Checkmk to monitoring is not all that difficult. And really, from that knowledge that we've gained, we also, we may not want to develop checks, but maybe just write a how-to, you know, a manual, just to see how do you monitor Jira if you run it. You know, those are things that we may do in this area, and things that can enrich Checkmk. Then we have a separate point from all of that, and that's the whole point metric collectors. Just as an example, containers, for example, Kubernetes. We have Prometheus as well, so each installation sort of has Prometheus included. Prometheus has a very similar principle as our agents. So they have the Prometheus exporters. It's a very simple protocol, and that is also something that you can implement yourself, and then you can just say, okay, applications of the Prometheus exporter interface, and that's going to give you some status information about your own application. There's a whole range of standard exporters that are commonly used, and for Checkmk as a data source, that would definitely be very, very suitable. And just for the fact, because they are so commonly used, it makes sense for us to have a good interface and to create a good interface for that. So you just have an easy time integrating systems like that. Another example that is also commonly used is StatSteel. That is something that is very similar, and it's a very similar concept. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about monitoring areas. Let's now talk about user experience. How do you use Checkmk? How do you use it so that it's fun? User interface usability. So at the end of the day, together with configuration, that's really one big area. And we started, and I've already introduced that, you've already seen that, you're familiar with it. That's the new user interface. So all the things that we're planning on doing by the time 1.6 is going to be released, all of that is sort of making it where usability is improved overall. And the next version is also going to take it a step further when it comes to our user interface. We definitely want to invest a lot of time into that. We want to invest time into understanding how you're using Checkmk, what are the masks that are good, you know, what makes it difficult, what makes it easy, and so on. And we really just want to see how it's currently being used and where the pain points are. And then we also want to sort of question concepts that we had for a while. So what's the status like, and so on? Are there lots of context buttons, for example? Does it make sense to show 50 buttons, or should it be set up in a different way? Things like that. And then also the filtering concept and the status views. Does it make sense? And would it make sense to do it differently? So just overall ideas what could be done in terms of usability. And that is very, very important to us. Okay, now features, the dashboard point. It could be possible to really build a dashboard already. You may know that from Grafana. Douglas also showed us how to do it with variables. So you can really have this dynamic dashboard if you want it. So I'm defining the dashboard once for an Oracle instance, for example, and then I have a second Oracle instance, and the name of the instance is then put into the dashboard, and then the dashboard automatically shows me the information for the second instance as well. So if we call that dynamic dashboard, that's exactly what we want to do. All of that is also going to be part of the next version. So it may be a standard dashboard for some features, and that way you have the possibility to create your own dashboards for your own systems. Talking about BI usability, we're having some thoughts on that as well. Nothing set in stone yet, but we're definitely hoping to do it. We have some discussions about it as well. And what we really want is making it where starting to use BI is easier. Yesterday I heard that some of you said that you're using BI. or you configured it to fit your needs. And what we think is that getting started with this is quite difficult just because of the nature of the thing. So BI is such a general thing, and there's just general rules to configure it. And because of that, dynamically, depending on which services you actually have, you create aggregates. And of course, understanding it is quite difficult. I understand that. It's maybe also due to the fact that there's missing documentation. It's now available, though. It's very detailed as well. And maybe it's also due to the fact that there are some problems in the configuration masks. And so maybe we also just have to do some general changes. For example, editing aggregates and things like that. Maybe that should be done differently. So those are ideas we have at this point in time. Now, let's talk about graphing optimization. Within Checkmk, we have our own graphing system. We do know that there are some weaknesses, for example, when it comes to usability. We've also seen it on the pinboards that some of the usability concepts are difficult and that they're easier in other tools like Grafana, for example. Those are things that we're definitely going to look into more detailed. And then another point is also performance within the graphing system. So there are different difficult situations. For example, I have a lot of different metrics within one graph, and that can create some performance problems. I can also have lots of different graphs on one screen. That could also create some problems. We do know about these problems, and we're just going to have to figure out how to find a solution. But that's also a point where we would say, okay, we're going to have to do something about that. User experience, new features. Okay, new features, you've already seen them. Oscar already showed you the current status of capacity management, and that is also something that can be expanded quite a bit. There's lots of ideas in this area. Aggregated metrics is also something I told you about yesterday. That's still a big topic. We weren't able to finish that by the release time for 1.6, but we're definitely going to follow up on that. And another point that hasn't been discussed yet on stage is a very big term, which is called dependency mapping. Dependency mapping could be simple things. For example, many of you already know that from Nagio's service dependencies. That doesn't exist in microcore. There's also different reasons why it doesn't exist. One reason could be that if you really want to properly use it, it's just difficult. So service dependencies, maintaining them and maintaining them well, making sure that there are no errors, that it's trustworthy, is a lot of work. That's one of the reasons why it's not implemented. And if you then connect it with other automated services, for example, data sources, for example, net flow monitoring that I've just talked about, if you actually include sources of information like that, then it could be very, very interesting. And first of all, to maybe make it where you don't get a notification as it's done on iOS with dependency notifications, and also to understand these systems better. So which component is communicated with the other component, what are they using, which kind of firewall can actually create a problem if it breaks, and so on. All these things are things that you could actually realize using NetFlow monitoring. And I do think, if I understand you correctly, that many of you think that's very interesting. So we're definitely going to discuss that.
Integrations in other tools is also something that we talk about a lot. The API is as it is. It's a bit, well, it's a bit unique. It does its service. It's not always as performant as we need it to be, but that's a different topic. What's important to us is that we have a clean REST API that we can offer, that for everyone who worked with these API, everyone should know what I can do and how to do it. These are established concepts. Why should we move away from that if these mechanisms actually work? There are tools helping me in my everyday work. We don't basically want to get in the way of that. We just want to make sure that it all works without any issues. Then, of course, the next topic, and we started working on this. Marcel and Philip talked about it for Ansible and Chef. Salt. Yeah, it was Salt. All these short names are very similar. Well, we want to keep going in that direction. I know that some of you are more experienced with these topics because you do a lot of automation in your everyday business. So we'd be really glad to get a few people of you together, maybe as a team, who could help us write something for the community to describe how to use Checkmk as an agent or a server, like how the agent with plugins, how that can be rolled out in a larger environment, because most of you are used to solving these problems yourself, and basically would be great if we find a common way to make sure it works, also to increase acceptance in areas like this. Then Grafana integration, I mentioned it briefly. There are ideas like annotations, for example. I think that's a great idea. Checkmk does have a lot more information than just the metrics. You could have the downtimes as annotations or acknowledgements or comments, maybe coming from the some information coming from the availability of the system, the service, or something like that. So there are many ideas and recommendations, and what I heard is that many of you find this relevant. So I think we have understood, and we will make something great with that information. Also, the connection of CMDBs, for example, with the example of I Do It, it's relevant for many of you in order to actually create a good IT documentation in combination with a good monitoring. I mean, we basically want to keep going with that when the need arises. It's really hard for us to find out what's relevant here, because it feels like you talk to 10 customers and they have got 20 CMDBs, and for us it's really hard to say, yeah, this CMDB is what we want to connect to. So only after we see the need, and only if requested. Notification tools, we started working with that in 1.5 and 1.6. First steps have been made, but we want to go deeper into that. But there are so many options which way to go, so we're also looking forward to your feedback on this. So another box filled when it comes to security. I mean, yes, that is an important field, and I'm really happy about Ralph's comments, what he said about our software, that we're on a really good way. We want to keep going down that path. We want to deliver something that is secure. We want to make sure it stays secure. Same is true for the quality, of course. I already mentioned that, and performance. I mean, performance, it's always like this. We build a system that is sitting or can work locally on the smallest machines. We can have a system that runs in distributed environments, big distributed environments, and looking at the support, we do know that it can be scaled, like a system like that can be scaled in any direction. Somebody has 20,000 tags, 50,000 groups, I don't know, 2 million hosts. These are things you cannot make up, really. In reality, this sometimes happens, and then you can say, wow, I never thought this was going to work. So in a system that's very performant, you have to look at reality sometimes and see, oh, I didn't think it would go that way for a customer, and we can improve it. I mean, we're in a great position to do so, so we're not worried. We can really keep going in that direction of performance. Then one actual point, which is Python 3. On the mailing list we had hot discussions on that, people requested it, and I think most of you know Checkmk is programmed in Python. Python 2.7 will have its end of life in 2020. That's not that far away. We didn't really feel the heat in that regard, mainly because Checkmk does come with its own Python, its own modules, and also there are many enterprise distributions going around with Python 2, and they will be around for a long time in the future. So the moment that Python as a project ends and doesn't get support anymore, it doesn't mean that all the security doors, floodgates are open and everything gets horrible. No, it will still function. It doesn't mean that we'll stay with Python 2 forever, but we will make sure that the migration will happen. It should happen with the next release, and it will be very interesting because Checkmk is based on more than 400,000 lines of Python code. So we do have quite a task in front of us. So how it's going to happen? We're going to start in the next few weeks, where our colleague Alex is going to start packaging Python 2 and Python 3 in parallel. So probably over the next development cycle, we will have packages for Python 2 and 3. Then we will start taking our basis libraries so that they can run under Python 2 and 3, so they're compatible to the present code of Python 3 and the new code that we have to migrate piece by piece. We'll start simply with active checks, 50 lines, and run it through. Then the next step is done, then the special agent may be a bit more complex, and then the next component, notification spooler or something, then perhaps event console, and this way we keep going step by step through the system until we end with Checkmk base and the checks, and then we really have to keep going for a month probably to make sure it ends up in this new world. But the plan really is to have full migration until Checkmk 1.7. So that's next year. Next year, Python 3. Right. Well, that is ambitious, yes. I am aware of it. And some of you will shake their heads and say, forget about it. But if you don't have a goal, you will never reach it. So, as an overview, this is what we want to do. I mean, you can see the color coding, what are our focuses, our top priorities. And that's the basis for discussion. This is the basis on which we're trying to make our decisions, on which we created our roadmap that is being adapted continuously, that we of course want to adapt to your needs. This is it. Thank you. You may, of course, ask questions. So, continuous adaptation, can we, you said you're continuously adapting the list, the future development. I mean, can I look at that somewhere, or can we look at it somewhere? Like, if there's a current state of affairs? Well, we don't have a medium for that as of now. There will be a partner stay at some point where we can talk about the development of the moment. I'm not sure if it's planned or when that's planned, but that will be the next official meeting. And if we give you information on the run or in the meantime, why not? Let's discuss about that. Hello, can we expect that the new Check API and Python 3 will come at the same time? So you don't have to go through the checks twice? Well, they won't come on the same day, but yes, simultaneously. Well, looks like everyone either fell asleep or it's not. I think they're all knocked out. Yeah, great. Oh yeah, somebody has a question. You asked for it. We migrate from Python 3 to Python 2 to Python 3. Will there be some delay with the checks? So is there a way that we can use the checks under both interpreters? So old checks in Python 2 and new checks in Python 3, like a big bang, changing everything from one day to the next? That's scary. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. You have the old checks in Python 3 and then you take them over into the new implementation. You use the new check API and there you have the Python 3. That would be my idea of the simple way to go. So the basic idea is check API, primary, Python 3, and no Python 2 anymore. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. You can have one process with Python 2 and Python 3 code running. Yeah, well, also makes me wonder, because the checks are all loaded in the same Python process. We'll find a way. Sure, why not? Maybe you said it and I wasn't listening. What happens? When can I use the new check API? Or is it in 1.6? No, it's not going to be in 1.6. A few things that Moritz showed us, a few minor things are already in the 1.5 P12. The large rework to the new structure, that will only happen in 1.7. And then the Python 3 coming along as well. Not a Python question from my side. This is about log file monitoring. There used to be... It's weird because I hear myself in the speaker. You said it should be implemented in the event console with the log file monitoring. I think what you are talking about is that we wanted to replace a logwatch GUI with the event console. Yeah, we didn't do anything in that regard. Can I give you another feature request for that? Yes, sure you can. My last request was just got lost somewhere. Yeah, please send us another one.